Hello, Diane. It's nice of you to be with us today. So tell us, why is this a passion project for you?
Well, like a lot of Filipinos that grew up in America, I grew up in this small Texas town, and I never saw any Asians for that matter, but certainly no Filipinos growing up. And I think by the time I knew I was going to be a filmmaker, I kind of always knew my first film should be about a Filipino young woman. And so after a couple of years of working in television and making little short films, I wrote the script, Yellow Rose, and it was over 15 years ago. And it was the movie I wanted to make for the younger version of myself, just give that movie to that Filipino American young woman, to show a story that was unique to my upbringing, which was, I grew up in Texas, and I used music as an outlet, and try to put it into the world. Now, never in my wildest imagination did I know it was going to take that long to convince people. But being somebody that works in Hollywood, when you look like this, it's just a gate. It's a no, you can't come in here, you can't play in this room, you can't do your stories. But things sort of gradually changed. And by the fact that I kind of stuck to it, or certainly always came back to it throughout my career, I kind of kept checking in on that project. Is this the right time? Is this the right time? I think, Asian films were starting to get recognized that they were legitimate box office potential, like Crazy Rich Asians, Searching, and then later The Farewell, and of course, Parasite. And so it was in that environment that we got funded finally, but we still had to get funded from Filipino money. It was still ABS-CBN and my investors, who are all Philam, investors, private equity investors. Everyone who gave money for the film was Filipino. And that's how the movie got made.
Why is this movie relevant, especially during these times when immigrants, and including Filipino immigrants, immigration and ICE centers are very timely topics during these times?
Yeah, despite the fact that the story was always about a mother who was getting arrested by immigration, and the fact that they would become separated. Definitely when, President Trump got elected and there was a bigger crackdown on immigration, I kind of adjusted the script to be a lot more about that. And so we follow, for example, Princess Pansalan, who plays Rose's mother. We follow her story as she goes through the system a lot more. And the film became about this young woman trying to find a home. And in the process of that, eventually finding her voice as an artist. And so it's relevant because I think there's probably never been a time in my lifetime when there was so much anti-immigrant sentiment. And then add on top of that, this recent disturbing slew of anti-Asian hate crimes, and which is new from when we even shot the film. So and then once again, we're literally weeks away from an important election that will determine, the next generation. So this film couldn't be coming out at a better time. The only really big downside is it's during the pandemic. That's the only real downside, but I'm still grateful that our film and Sony Pictures is doing its part to sort of help the theater business stay in business as much as we can. And that's important to me.
Mm-hmm. You touched a little bit about this. This project is a little personal for you, since the character of Eva Noblezada is Filipino American growing up in Texas, and you grew up in Texas as well. So why is it also personal for you?
I mean, it's back to that thing that I said about wanting to represent, to give the Filipino audience an opportunity to say, I feel seen. And that just is too rarely happens. It's a good thing and a sad thing that we're one of the first Filipino films ever released by a Hollywood studio for theatrical release. I mean, that's terrible, since Filipinos have been here since 1587. I mean, we've been here. We're a vital part. We're the third largest immigrant group. And yet, where are our stories? So the fact that a major Hollywood studio picked us up, the fact that we were taken on to be an official Gold Open, following in the line of Crazy Rich Asians and The Farewell and Parasite. It's the first Filipino film as part of an official Gold Open lineup. And just yesterday we started getting our reviews in. I'm so grateful and very relieved that they were very positive and just a warm reception. People got it. Everyone from New York Times to Variety to LA Times, Chicago Tribune, Hollywood Reporter, all the sort of Hollywood big papers. Just even that we were in them was a big, success. But the fact that they embraced the film is even more wonderful.
I know it's challenging for a colored person, ethnic, and a Filipina woman to get into Hollywood. What are the challenges you encountered? And you mentioned something like people saying no to you. How did you hurdle those challenges?
I just kept directing. And that's an advice I want to give to all the young Filipino filmmakers out there. Part of Hollywood, part of the movie business is rejection. You will get it. I'm going to get it after this film. I got it throughout up until this point. And you really just have to stay the course. You have to know that there's value in your story and that eventually someone will back you and someone will support you. Having said that, you have to constantly advocate for yourself. And, that's such a Filipino thing anyway. We have to do it ourselves, because nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. And that's one of the things I love about Filipino people. No matter where they end up in the world, we are survivors. And that's the case of Rose. So you're going to get told no, there's going to be gates, but just keep at it. And what's really heartening is that we are starting to have our own Filipino Hollywood, starting with you and Ruben and all these other amazing filmmakers that are starting to get noticed, like Isabel Sandoval, of course, Ramona Diaz, and just a bunch of new exciting filmmakers like Marie Jamora and Jess de la Merced, H.P. Mendoza, who's been making film for years. We're all friends, we're all allies, and we're part of a community that, that's how, white Hollywood has been forever. It was a club. So I like that we're starting to have our own club and our own support system. And it's so important to me that we are supporting each other, and we do.
And this is such a casting coup for you. So talk about how you got and like Eva Noblezada, Lea Salonga, Princess Punzalan, and Dale Watson. So can you talk about
I mean, it's a dream cast. It's a dream cast. The very first person I cast was Princess Punzalan. So when we got financing to do the shorts, because I did a short film that was a proof of concept to help raise more money. I met up with Princess, and in the end, we didn't have any scenes with the mother, but I cast her anyway, and knowing that we would eventually be making a feature. So she was the first person, and she's incredible. And then the next one was Dale. Shortly after that, I met Dale and cast him in the short, and he's been not only an actor in the film, he is the main songwriter of the film. We shot in his house. He's a producer. He just became such an important part of the mix. And then when we finally got money to do the short, to do the feature, I finally watched Eva Noblezada on Broadway because I knew I couldn't cast her. I didn't even want to see the play. I'm like, I can't watch it. It's going to break my heart. But when I knew that was coming to an end in a number of months, I went to see it. I sent her manager the script. She read the script. I don't think she even knew I was going to watch her the night I met her, but I watched her right before I met her. And I had dinner with her. And by the time I had seen her in Miss Saigon, I just offered her the part. And my producers were probably like, excuse me, you should consult us. But I just did, because I just knew she was the one. And I'm so glad I did. And we had to wait to shoot with her. Like, we had to hold production until she had a window of time to do it. And then shortly after I cast Eva, I met up with Leia, who also read the script and agreed to meet with me. And she just knew that it was an important film. At least that's what she told me. And that even though she hadn't been in a movie in 24 years, that this was an opportunity to be part of something that would be a milestone. And I'm so glad she did. And I'm so glad it was, because at that point we didn't have distribution, and then of course the last part of all of that is Sony Pictures, that they bought our film, that they have been supporting our film, to be in a huge Hollywood studio, just to go through those gates and under the rainbow and all those amazing movies that were made on the Sony lot, and to have that meeting with them, for them to tell me they're going to buy our film. I'll never ever forget that.
So you met Leia in the Philippines?
I met her here. She was doing in New York. She was doing Once This Island. So she had just come from doing her show to meet me for dinner. So it just so happened she was in New York during that time.
So talk about more about the song Square Peg that Eva sang. Is this an original song? Or, and
it is.
I love the message about the song. So I never fit in, I never could win. So talk more about that song, Square Peg.
So my intention for all the music in the film was that we as a cast would write the music together as part of our production, so that the music would generate from us living and thinking about these characters and what the song should sound like. So Square Peg, we actually wrote for the short. So a great singer and actress, Thea Magia, who was an American Idol finalist, and she just got nominated for an Emmy, a daytime Emmy, was cast in the short, but it was her melody that we used. So on day one of shooting the short, myself, Dale, and Thea just sat in a room, and she played that melody. And then we were like, I was like, oh, what if it's like square peg, round hole? Oh, that's good. And then Dale was like, what if this turns like, and we wrote the song together, like in one day, like the first day we met, we wrote Square Peg, and the rest is history. Dale recorded the background with his band, and we produced it in the studio. And we used that music, we saved that music when we cast the feature, and then Eva re-recorded it with her vocal, which is incredible. So that was the story of that song. But it emanated from thinking about what's the song that Rose would be writing at this point in the film and throughout the film. So it really came from that.
Are you a country music lover as well? And what kind of music do you listen to?
I was not. When I wrote the film, even though I grew up in Texas, I listened to a few things. I had some Patsy Cline, which you see in the film, and I had some Johnny Cash, like all kind of music nerds do. Willie Nelson but that's it. I listened mostly to like British punk. I had a mohawk, I shaved my head. I was like, wore a dog collar. It's like a punk rocker. But music was my outlet. But when I started writing the script, it was, I thought, a more interesting story for her to love Texas and to like deeply understand the music. So I started researching country music and kind of diving into the character and the type of music I thought she would listen to, which is the kind of stuff I did listen to when I was younger. And then I kind of course, at this point, I absolutely am a country fan. And it's like a certain kind of country music that's like a throwback to the old style of country music that Dale himself plays. And you hear the sound from the film. That's the music I love. And I do want to say to your viewers, even if you don't like country music or you never thought you would, I'm certain that you will like these songs, because in some weird way, they're very similar to Filipino ballads. They're, beautiful country music is something I think that Filipinos will like. Even Dahil Sa'yo, which is a song we feature in the film, it almost sounds like a country song. It's a ballad. So I think it all kind of lives together in the same universe. And I do hope people will give it a chance, especially because our soundtrack dropped today. So our soundtrack is available today on iTunes and Spotify, even in the Philippines. I know, because my brother downloaded it and just texted me this morning, it's working. So you can listen to the soundtrack on Spotify, you can buy it on iTunes, Amazon, all the platforms. So even in advance of watching the film, you can listen to the music.
Mm-hmm. You grew up in Lubbock, Texas, which is the birthplace of Buddy Holly. So talk about Texas as a character in your film.
Oh my gosh, I love that you know that. I went to the high school of Buddy Holly, and I was a fan of his because, of course, he grew up in Lubbock. And I remember I found out which was his locker in my high school, and I was like, oh, that's the locker of Buddy Holly. So he definitely was a big feature, and Texas is a big part of my upbringing. I spent my whole childhood there, and I went to college there in Austin. But after I graduated, I lived in New York. And so my memory of Texas by the time I wrote the script was this very romantic memory. And I think I wanted to shoot the film in this almost like nostalgic way, even though it takes place in the current day. I wanted it to feel like this love letter to what in my romantic imagination, is Texas. So Peter DeBruce, who reviewed our film for Variety, described the beautiful color palette of a Texas sky. And he grew up in Texas, and he said, like, she clearly grew up in Texas because that's one of the most unique things to the beauty of Texas the sky and the sunsets. And I shot a lot of that, as you recall, in the film.
Yeah. So Yellow Rose was also a nickname given by the classmates of Rosario,
Yes.
character to her because of her Asian heritage. So this is kind of a racist fun. Growing up, have you ever experienced such the same thing?
Oh, for sure. You know, even when we were shooting the short film, we were in some bar in the middle of nowhere shooting in a bar, and there were real customers there, and someone said, oh, who let the yellow people in?
Oh.
So that was just a couple of years ago. But as I was growing up, absolutely. Of course, like in the film, I had my friends and they were huge supporters, and I had a group of support system. But there was a lot of very blatant racism. Even I remember in high school, after a football game, some kids had spray painted egg roll mobile on the side of my van. And I had to drive around town with it, and people were laughing at me, that's a very vivid memory of where it was very blatant. And I got it to my face a lot. Are you Chinese or Mexican? I got that a lot. And it was there. And I didn't even think of anything of it. I didn't think it was racism at the time. I just thought that's how people are. It's only until I got to Austin and went to college that I realized, oh, those people were being racist to me.
So this film is also about kindness. So talk about how important kindness, especially during these times.
Yes. It's so interesting because, and I'm going to bring up something controversial. Some people have called the film white savior. And I really take offense to that because I made great efforts for the film not to be about that. What I do show, however, are allies. What I do show is the kindness, as you say, and thank you for saying that, of people. And guess what? Most of her world is white. That's how it was for me when I was growing up. And that's the reality of country music, and which is why I set it in that environment. So I think it is as subversive, if not more subversive, to show people going against possibly their own ideology, possibly their own profession, and doing these acts of kindness at times where it's actually even putting them in danger. That's actually something we don't see enough of in films. We see enough division and yelling at each other, and frankly, a bigger trope is the redneck. I think that's actually more cliched. So the fact that I showed the other side was intentional, and I will sit here and defend it until I'm blue in the face, because I have gotten that criticism and I take great offense to it.
So growing up, who were your inspirations to be a filmmaker? Do you have any Filipino filmmaker who inspired you?
I do. I mean, I knew probably the only filmmaker I knew as I was growing up was Lino Brocca, who of course is a legend. But for me, when I was in college, I did take some film studies classes, not production, but film studies. And I think the most influential filmmaker at that time, there's two, were Asian filmmakers, but not Filipino. One was Zhang Yimou, who it was the first film I saw with a full Asian cast, was Judo with Gong Li. And it almost is, I would say I could probably point to that film as the film where it first came in my head that I would want to make a film like that. And the other filmmaker who's a huge influence on me is Ang Lee, because not only did I respond to his films, and you can kind of see how I do love his films Yellow Rose has some similarities with his early work, with the Taiwanese American stories that he did that are some of my favorite movies ever made. But the fact that he kind of is genre agnostic, that he's constantly tackling different stories and different genres, that's something I hope to do, and I am going to do in the next couple of films that I have lined up.
Yeah, my next question is, what are your upcoming projects?
Yes, so I have a project I'm doing with Scooter Braun and Eric Feig, who used to be the president of Lionsgate, and he started a new company called Picture Start. So we're doing a project together, and I'm also doing a project with Atlas Media, who did Wonder Woman and all the great Suicide Squad franchise. And I'm writing a film. So the film I'm writing is I'm really excited about. It's called Lizards, a pop opera. And it's about a young girl who is growing up in Japanese occupied Manila during World War II. And I'm writing it as a musical pop music opera. So it follows her journey as she becomes an underground guerrilla, which actually happened in World War II. A lot of women fought in the war, which people don't know about. But also it's about colorism and colonialism, because the girl has this magical, realistic world of lizards, where she kind of has this magical lizard that is from her childhood. So it's ambitious, but I've been writing it, and it's a project I'm deeply passionate about. So it's sort of like the big budget version of Yellow Rose, but it's a war film told from a female perspective and a musical.
And so, what do you think audiences will get, and what do you hope audiences will get after watching Yellow Rose?
I hope they see us. I hope they see our Filipino stories. I hope they see the American immigrant experience. And I hope they are singing a song that they can't get out of their head by the end. But most of all, I hope they're moved. I hope it touches something in them, whether they see themselves in the film or see a different part and experience that they've never seen before. And I do think there's something in the film for everyone. It is an American story first and foremost. It's a musical, it's a Western, it's a coming of age story. And if you like any of that, I think you'll like this movie. And I hope people give it a chance and try to put their politics at the door, and just watch the movie for what it is. And that's the story of an artist trying to find her voice.
Thank you very much, Diane, for joining.
Thank you, Janet.
Hope to see you in next time.
Yes, when I'm in LA next time, we're gonna have some adobo together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.